What if I told you the 1940s cinema was hiding treasures so powerful they could shatter your expectations of what old Hollywood could do? Today, we're peeling back the curtains on 15 forgotten masterpieces, movies that dared to be different, that bled heart, ambition, and tragedy into every frame. Some were victims of war, others crushed by studios, and a few were just too ahead of their time. Buckle up, because these hidden gems are about to rewrite the way you see the Golden Age. The Seventh Victim, 1943. Imagine walking rain-slick streets where lamplight flickers uncertainly through heavy mist, where every alley seems to sigh with invisible threats. That's the chilling world of The Seventh Victim, a noir horror hybrid that doesn't so much scare you as infect you. Directed by Mark Robson under the eerie genius of producer Val Lewton, the film follows Mary Gibson, a timid girl pulled from her sheltered boarding school into the shadowy heart of New York, searching for her missing sister, Jacqueline. What she finds isn't violence, not exactly, but a world of whispers, secret cults, and the unbearable magnetism of death itself. The true horror of The Seventh Victim lies in its resignation. Jacqueline doesn't flee her cult, she barely resists. Death isn't an enemy here, it's a lover, beckoning from the dark. The cultists don't hunt or torture, they wait, patiently, for those already broken to surrender. Studio executives had no idea how to market something so bleak in 1943. They buried it in limited release, afraid audiences drowning in wartime anxiety wouldn't stomach a film that dared to say, "Sometimes we walk willingly into the dark. Watch closely." The film's true monster isn't any secret society. It's despair. It's the whisper that maybe fighting is pointless. It's the way empty stairwells seem to breathe. It's the slow horror that sometimes all the love in the world isn't enough to pull someone back. The Seventh Victim doesn't leave you screaming. It leaves you silent, staring into the void, and seeing it stare back. They Live by Night, 1948. Before Bonnie and Clyde made rebellion look glamorous, They Live by Night painted a far more honest and infinitely more heartbreaking portrait of doomed love on the run. Nicholas Ray, in his astonishing directorial debut, crafts a story not of hardened criminals, but of two young people, Bowie and Keechie, desperately clawing at a life they were never allowed to have. Bowie is fresh from a prison escape, not evil, but simply a boy born under a bad star. Keechie, battered by years of neglect, is so unfamiliar with tenderness that even a kind word feels dangerous. Their love story isn't fireworks and passion, it's survival. It's the soft desperation of two souls clinging to each other like shipwrecked survivors, knowing the waves will eventually tear them apart. Ray's documentary-like style, handheld cameras, naturalistic settings, makes their world feel brutally real. There's a heartbreaking sequence where Bowie and Keechie pretend, just for one night, that they're an ordinary married couple. They buy curtains. They talk about babies. You can feel the dream trembling in their hands, fragile as spun glass. But there's no place for dreams here. The cops are coming. The sins of their past, and the world's unforgiving hand, are catching up fast. Audiences in 1948 didn't know what to make of They Live by Night. They wanted gangsters who died with a snarl, not young lovers who died with a whimper. The film flopped, but today, it stands tall, a fragile, devastating hymn to the simple, unbearable hope that life could be better, if only the world would let it. The Mortal Storm, 1940. Before America officially entered World War II, Hollywood danced nervously around the storm brewing in Europe. Few dared name the evil rising there. Fewer still pointed fingers. But The Mortal Storm did, and paid a steep price for its courage. Directed by Frank Borzage, master of romantic idealism, the film captures the chilling erosion of everyday life as Nazism infects a quiet German village. Professor Roth, beloved by students and neighbors alike, finds his Jewish heritage weaponized against him overnight. Friends turn into enemies, sons turn into informers, lovers tear themselves apart over ideology. What makes The Mortal Storm unforgettable is its intimacy. It's not about armies clashing on muddy fields. It's about a dinner table where no one can agree if freedom still exists. It's about a son, hand trembling on the doorknob, unsure if loyalty lies with family or Führer. It's about a woman who watches the man she loves choose hatred over her and realizes there's no future between them anymore. Borzog floods the screen with visual metaphors, snowstorms that swallow desperate escapees, collapsing houses that mirror collapsing societies. And he makes no apologies. The villains aren't misunderstood. They're ordinary people who chose cruelty. MGM buried the film internationally, fearing backlash from Germany. Careers were damaged, profits tanked. But in hindsight, the mortal storm burns with righteous fury, and the kind of heartbreaking clarity that only comes when it's already too late. The Letter, 1940. A pistol's crack cuts through the muggy Singaporean night, and with it, Bette Davis sets the tone for The Letter, a noir soaked in betrayal, lust, and the unbearable cost of lying to yourself. Leslie Crosby's story begins with her cool, calculated confession that she shot a man who attacked her. But director William Wyler's camera lingers on her, slowly peeling away the polished surface to reveal the raw, writhing jealousy underneath. It wasn't self-defense. It wasn't justice. It was passion, greed, and fear. And Leslie's refusal to admit it even to herself makes her all the more compelling. The tropical setting hums with decay, buzzing insects, rotting vegetation, oppressive heat. Wyler turns Singapore into a metaphor for the rot seeping into every character's soul. At a time when Hollywood demanded clear moral lines, The Letter dares to admit that truth and lies often look indistinguishable, and that sometimes the worst betrayals are the ones we commit against our own hearts. By the end, when Leslie's perfect life collapses under the weight of her own lies, we don't cheer, we don't boo, we simply watch, awed, horrified, and heartbreakingly human. The Oxbow Incident, 1943. There's a moment in the Oxbow Incident when Henry Fonda's character looks into the camera, looks into us, and asks, "What are we if we give up thinking for ourselves?" This isn't a Western of heroic cattle drives or gunfights. It's a grim, claustrophobic morality play about a lynch mob fueled by rage, fear, and the terrifying comfort of acting without doubt. 3 men accused of cattle rustling are found. No trial, no evidence, just a rope and a tree. Even as some in the posse waver, mob psychology wins. Doubt is buried under the crushing need for blood. Director William Wellman shoots it almost like a horror film. Empty landscapes feel suffocating. Torches cast monstrous shadows. The condemned men's faces, confused, pleading, bitterly resigned, are burned into your mind long after the film ends. When the truth finally comes out, too late. The horror isn't just that innocent men were killed. It's that good men, normal men, did it with barely a pause. The Oxbow Incident isn't just a movie. It's a warning that still echoes through history, that the price of justice is doubt, mercy, and thinking for yourself, even when the crowd howls otherwise. The Fallen Idol, 1948. Imagine worshiping someone so completely that even their darkest sins seem forgivable. That's the devastating heart of The Fallen Idol, directed by Carol Reed at the height of his creative power. Through the wide, fearful eyes of young Philippe, we see a world tilted by betrayal. His beloved butler, Baines, is the towering hero of his lonely life, adventurous, kind, and larger than life. But when Philippe stumbles upon Baines entangled in lies, infidelity, and even possible murder, the boy's fairy tale world crumbles into jagged pieces. Reed directs with masterful precision, shrinking the towering embassy where Philippe lives into a cold, echoing labyrinth. High staircases, vast halls, and looming doors swallow the boy whole, making every decision, every whispered lie, feel crushing. The beauty of The Fallen Idol is its brutal honesty about how innocence is lost. Felipe lies to the police to protect Baines, spinning a web so tangled it eventually threatens both their lives. His lies aren't malicious, they're desperate, confused, heartbreakingly human. The emotional climax is quiet, not explosive. A boy realizing that grown-ups are not gods, but flawed, frightened creatures like himself. The final shot, with Philippe standing alone, is one of the loneliest images ever put on film. By the end, you realize the true tragedy isn't whether Baines is guilty or innocent. It's that Philippe can never again believe in anyone so purely. The Fallen Idol doesn't break your heart with violence. It breaks it with whispered truths, too painful to deny. Ministry of Fear, 1944. Step outside the asylum gates into freedom and straight into hell. That's the nightmare journey Ministry of Fear drags you into, with Fritz Lang's cold, unrelenting grip guiding every step. Stephen Neal, played with hollow-eyed intensity by Ray Milland, is a man newly released after years locked away for what society deemed a crime of mercy. Yet within hours of tasting freedom, he's snared in a deadly Nazi espionage plot, triggered by a slice of cake won at a seemingly harmless charity fair. Lang drenches the film in dread. Even bright English countrysides feel corrupted, rotting underneath their sunny surfaces. Train compartments become traps. Strangers' smiles curdle into sinister grins. Nowhere is safe. What sets Ministry of Fear apart isn't just the thrilling cat-and-mouse chase. It's the deep, gnawing sense that Stephen's real prison isn't behind bars anymore. It's inside him. Every time he doubts an ally, every time he second-guesses a truth, we see the scars war has already carved into him. The climactic showdown isn't just physical, it's psychological. In facing his enemy, Stephen must confront the broken fragments of his own mind, shattered long before any spy set a trap for him. Ministry of Fear reminds us that in times of chaos, the most dangerous enemy isn't always the one chasing you. Sometimes it's the one already inside your head. The Reckless Moment, 1949. Beneath the polished surfaces of suburban America, the reckless moment finds a battlefield where morality, love, and desperation collide in slow-motion disaster. Joan Bennett delivers a shattering performance as Lucia Harper, a respectable mother and housewife whose world begins to collapse when her teenage daughter's ill-advised affair with a shady man ends in tragedy. Desperate to protect her family's reputation, Lucia makes a series of small, increasingly reckless decisions, each one tightening a noose she can't see until it's too late. Max Ophuls directs with a delicate, suffocating grace. His camera drifts with Lucia through pristine kitchens, well-kept parlors, and sunlit porches, turning domestic bliss into a fragile glass bubble vibrating on the verge of shattering. Lucia is no femme fatale. She's no master schemer. She's every mother who has ever lied for a child, every person who thought a little sin could make a bigger sin go away. Her growing entanglement with a conflicted blackmailer, who, astonishingly, seems to fall in love with her, adds layers of twisted tenderness to the suffocating tension. There's no grand explosion in The Reckless Moment, no courtroom drama, just a slow, relentless unraveling of a woman trapped by the very love that defines her. By the end, Lucia survives, but she isn't unscathed. The cost of protecting her family is written across her weary face, invisible to the neighbors smiling politely across the picket fences. The Reckless Moment dares to show the dark cost of ordinary decency in an indecent world. The Glass Key, 1942. In the murky political landscape of the Glass Key, loyalty is as brittle and as deadly as glass. Alan Ladd, cool and coiled like a spring, plays Ed Beaumont, a political fixer caught between his friendship with corrupt kingmaker Paul Madvig, Brian Donlevy, and his own moral awakening. Their bond, strained to the breaking point, twists and warps as murder, blackmail, and betrayal pile up around them. Unlike the glossy crime films of the day, The Glass Key wallows in bruised knuckles, bloodied faces, and friendships that curdle into enmity. Beaumont isn't a knight. He's a survivor, scraping through beatings and double crosses with dogged, bruised stubbornness. Veronica Lake's slinky, enigmatic performance adds another layer of danger, as Beaumont's loyalty to Madvig falters under the pull of forbidden attraction. Theirs isn't a burning romance. It's a slow, fatal orbit around each other, knowing even a single misstep could be fatal. Director Stuart Heisler keeps the pace taut, the atmosphere tense, and the emotions raw. You can almost smell the sweat in the smoke-filled rooms, feel the bitter taste of defeat hovering over every conversation. By the end, the characters may survive, but their world, their illusions, and their bonds lie in ruins. In The Glass Key, survival doesn't feel like victory. It feels like an unbearable compromise with the darkness inside us all. Letter from an Unknown Woman, 1948. Some love stories are written in fireworks, others in ashes. Letter from an Unknown Woman is the latter. a delicate, devastating masterpiece about unrequited love and the brutal indifference of memory. Joan Fontaine is luminous and heartbreakingly fragile as Lisa, a girl who falls in love with a talented but careless pianist, Stefan Brand, Louis Jourdan. Her love is pure, unconditional, and completely invisible to the man who becomes the axis of her life. Max Ophüls' camera glides like a ghost through Lisa's memories. The velvet darkness of concert halls, moonlit carriage rides through empty streets, the tiny attic rooms where she hoards souvenirs of a man who barely knows she exists. Every detail is achingly romantic, but shot through with inevitable sorrow. Lisa offers Stefan everything: her youth, her innocence, her dreams, even her child, without ever asking for anything in return. And Stefan, too self-absorbed to recognize the gift he's been given, lets her slip away without ever truly seeing her. The final revelation that Lisa has loved and suffered in silence her entire life, and that Stefan realizes it only when it's far, far too late, is almost too much to bear. Ophuls doesn't rage against lost love. He mourns it, gently, beautifully, devastatingly. Letter from an Unknown Woman isn't just about love. It's about the chasm between what we mean to others and what they mean to us, and how sometimes the deepest tragedies are the quietest ones. The Long Voyage Home, 1940. John Ford's The Long Voyage Home doesn't offer adventure. It offers exhaustion, the grinding, spirit-breaking exhaustion of men who spend their lives adrift between wars, dreams, and heartbreak. Adapted from Eugene O'Neill's plays, the film strings together vignettes of sailors aboard a cargo ship during World War II. There's no hero's journey here, just a slow, creeping realization that for many, the sea is less a calling and more a slow death sentence. Greg Toland's cinematography turns every porthole into a coffin lid, every fog bank into a shroud. Shadows press in on the crew, distorting their features, making their world seem half swallowed by sorrow. John Wayne, shedding his usual bravado, plays Ole, a homesick Swede desperate to return to his family. But hope, in The Long Voyage Home, is a dangerous thing. Ole is tricked into signing away his freedom, sold into slavery on another ship. Wayne's face, slack with heartbreak, becomes the soul of the film, a silent scream against the cruelty of fate. By the end, the ship steams off into darkness, carrying a fresh cargo of broken men toward oblivion. Ford wasn't making a war movie. He was making an elegy for lost innocence, for dead dreams, for all the souls swallowed by the vast, uncaring ocean. Portrait of Jenny, 1948. Portrait of Jenny is less a film than a wistful sigh frozen in celluloid. It's a ghost story, a love story, a meditation on time, loss, and the art we leave behind. Joseph Cotten stars as Eben Adams, a struggling painter wandering Depression-era New York until he meets Jenny, a strange, enchanting girl who seems to slip through the cracks of reality itself. Each time Eben meets her, she's changed. Older, more distant, more tragic. Director William Dieterle bathes the film in an eerie, ethereal atmosphere. Mist curls around statues in Central Park. Winter's first snow seems to whisper secrets, and every encounter feels like a dream half-remembered. Dmitri Tiomkin's haunting score and Joseph August's ghostly cinematography turn even mundane settings into portals to another world. As Eben paints Jenny's portrait, we feel his growing terror, that he's falling in love with someone already halfway to another existence. And when the final reel bursts into Technicolor, it's not triumph, it's mourning, a vivid, impossible memory that burns too brightly to last. Few films capture longing so purely. Fewer still dare to suggest that some loves and some dreams are too fragile for the harsh light of the real world. Portrait of Jenny doesn't just ask you to believe in ghosts, it asks you to mourn them. The Small Backroom, 1949. In The Small Backroom, war isn't a series of grand charges and soaring speeches. It's a slow, poisonous drip, eroding the souls of the forgotten men behind the front lines. Sammy Rice, played with searing vulnerability by David Farrar, is a crippled bomb disposal expert drowning in whiskey, self-loathing, and bureaucratic indifference. He's brilliant, but broken, his injuries visible and invisible both. His office is small, dark, and cluttered, The Back Room, where unsung heroes fight invisible battles against time, loneliness, and despair. Directors Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger create a world of shadows and claustrophobia, a world where every ticking second is a battle between willpower and hopelessness. The film's crowning sequence, a nerve-shredding, almost silent bomb defusal scene on a lonely beach, isn't just suspenseful, it's spiritual. It's the moment when Sammy faces the ultimate question. Am I strong enough to survive myself? Victory, when it comes, is bitter and hard-won. Sammy saves lives, but the cracks in his soul remain. The Small Backroom reminds us that the bravest fights often happen far from the battlefield, and that some wounds never truly heal. So, proudly we hail 1943. Most wartime films of the 1940s wrapped the battlefield in patriotism and glory. So, proudly we hail rips off that glittering mask and shows you the bleeding face underneath. Following a group of American Army nurses sent to the Philippines during World War II, the film plunges straight into chaos, fear, and unimaginable loss. Claudette Colbert, Veronica Lake, and Paulette Goddard each deliver powerhouse performances, embodying different facets of the cost of war: strength, sacrifice, anger, and shattered faith. Lake's performance is particularly haunting. Her character, Olivia, loses everything she loves: her husband, her hope, her will to survive. Her final act, a suicide mission undertaken with quiet, almost casual resolve, is one of the most gut-wrenching moments in classic cinema, without speeches, without glory. Just a last tired smile and a walk into legend. Director Mark Sandrich, better known for musicals, crafts battle scenes not as set pieces, but as moments of harrowing confusion and private devastation. Bullets tear through dreams. Bombs don't discriminate between heroes and innocents. By the end, So Proudly We Hail doesn't leave you with swelling pride. It leaves you with quiet awe and a profound, aching respect for those who lived, died, and endured in the margins of history's bloodiest pages. Moonrise, 1948. We end with a whisper, a confession pulled from the darkest, most broken parts of the human heart. Frank Borzage's Moonrise is a small miracle of a film, intimate, painful, and ultimately breathtakingly hopeful. Danny Hawkins, played by Dane Clark, has lived under the long shadow of shame all his life. His father was executed for murder. The town mocks him, beats him, fears him. One night, after a brutal confrontation with his lifelong tormentor, Danny snaps and kills him in self-defense. But Moonrise doesn't care about crime and punishment. It cares about redemption. Danny flees not from the law, but from himself, from the belief that evil is written into his very blood. Borzage crafts a dreamlike world of misty swamps, crumbling houses, and nighttime trains thundering toward unseen destinations. The darkness isn't just external, it's inside Danny, and conquering it requires something more terrifying than fighting. It requires forgiving himself. The final act, when Danny, bloodied, broken, sobbing, chooses to turn himself in rather than run, is one of the most moving moments in cinema history. Not because he's punished, but because, for the first time, he chooses hope over despair. Moonrise reminds us that the sins of our fathers don't have to define us, that redemption isn't granted, it's fought for, moment by agonizing moment, and that even in the darkest places, light can still find a way through.